Ty, you No Shave November there?
What's that?
Ty, you No Shave November there?
That's
What's that?
coming in weird.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you good, Ty. I can't hear Eric very well.
Yeah, Eric, something's,
I just unmute myself. Is that better? Ty, you No Shave November there?
you're cutting up, Eric.
What's that?
Coming in weird.
So he's on a loop. He might have YouTube.
I can hear you good, Ty. I can't hear Eric very well.
Yeah, Eric, something's,
Or Denise, is it coming through your YouTube?
no.
Ty, you No Shave
Oh,
November.
I did. It was me. Sorry. I had started the live stream and I've got to go out and shut YouTube off. Sorry, my bad.
How about mine? Can you hear mine okay?
Yes,
Can you hear me okay now?
yes. It was me.
Okay.
At least I know YouTube's running. Hi, Gary. I think all we're waiting for is the mayor.
You better come.
If he scheduled it, right?
We'll dock his pay if he's not here.
Says the mayor pro tem.
Exactly right. We'll let him do this facilitating tonight.
We need to introduce a new city manager. I don't recognize the picture there. That's better. The whiskers threw me there, Ty. Sorry.
It's No Shave November, so I
Right on.
only have a couple days left.
There you go.
But
I
I'm
thought
not,
you'd blame it on COVID or something.
Our entire police department actually doesn't shave in
Is that
November.
right?
I
And they get-
remember that.
They give the money right to charity is what they do, which is really a good thing. But I think they love it way too much.
Probably even look forward to it.
Yeah.
actually easier with a mask on because my stubble was always like pulling my mask when I talked, and now I had the
Yeah.
little over there, so I might keep it. We'll see.
Oh, there's the mayor. Okay. Hi, Mayor. We're ready to go.
Okay. Everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate the thoughts going into this. I'm sure the last couple, 3 days, you've done some thinking on this concept tonight, particularly the item dealing with the rezone. Let me go through and set up some thoughts here to start with as far as parameters. And Gary, please join in if I say something's not correct or not kosher. As we look at this zone change tonight, that's what it is, a zone change. As far as a map concept, that's something we're not even going to deal with tonight. A whole different topic as far as a map concept, just a zone change tonight. Current zone is agriculture, which is 5 acres per lot. The general plan has that changed to specifies low density residential, means single family residential. That is within the ordinance to make that change based on what general plan has it set for. With that said, within the single family residential, the ordinance allows for 3 different classifications. The R110, which is 10,000 square feet minimum per lot, which is about 3.5 units per acre, or buildings per acre. The R112, which is 12,000 square feet, which is 2.9 homes per acre. Or the R120, which is 20,000 square feet, which is 1.7 units per acre. The code allows for any one of those 3 within the zone chain. As we look at that, tonight's request is for an R110, which is, yes, legal and within the ordinance to request. As we look at the surrounding area, and you've seen maps and seen this already, the Island Road area, it is zoned in R18. That's the zone for the Island Road area. However, its current use is about 1 home per acre for most of Island Road. There are a few smaller ones, but most of them are 1 acre. That's the current use. Current zone again is R18. The 400 West Road, the folks across the 400 West, to the west of the new development, they're in R120, which is approximately 1/2 an acre, just shy of 1/2 an acre. 1/2 an acre between 1,780 square feet, and their minimum is 20,000 square feet. The agricultural fields on the other side of this development, they're all zoned agriculture, and the future land map or general plan shows them as rural residential, which is 1 acre lot as far as the current zoning of those. The project is proposed at a R110, which is just shy of 1/4 acre. 1/4 acre would actually be 10,890 square feet. They could have a minimum of 10,000 square feet. That's kind of the ramification of what's around it versus what is allowed. I've gone through, I've got several options for us tonight. There's several motion and voting options. Let me go through those with you, things that I think you could consider this evening. Not in any particular order. One option tonight would be to pass the request for the R110 zone as it is. Another option would be to pass the requested R110 zone with a development agreement to specify certain criteria. And I'll talk to you about what a development agreement could be. Another option tonight would be to deny the request for the R110. And what that then does, and correct me on this, Gary, if I'm wrong, if I misinterpret this, what that does then is the developer or landowner cannot come back for 1 year and request an R110. But they could come back and request something different. They could come back and request an R1, 12 and R120, or they could come back and propose another mix if they wanted to, as soon as they're ready to do that. Is that correct, Gary? Okay.
Yeah.
Another option. We could pass a motion for an R120, R112, and let it stand on its merits. We could pass an option for, and also R112 with a development agreement for other stipulations if we desired. We could also pass a motion for an R120 just by itself, or an R120 with a development agreement to specify certain items. Or we could table a motion for some further consideration. If we get into discussion and you're torn between what to do, that'd be another possible option if you want to table it and come back next meeting to make a decision if you think you need more time to decide that. Those are some of those are the options we have tonight before us as we talk about what's there and what we think want to happen. Gary, would you like to add to that?
No, I think you've pretty much hit all of the options. Just maybe I could tell you a little bit about the legal standard that city councils have to comply with. The Planning Commission has a very, very strict agenda in that they have to apply the ordinance to the to the fact situation that they're in. When it comes to flexibility, you have the maximum flexibility, of course, on annexation, any type of annexation project, because they're outside of the city trying to come in. The next place where you have considerable flexibility is in the zone change. And essentially, the zone change is governed. We're not in a state where you have to strictly comply with your general plan, but it is governed by your general plan. And your general plan is the very, very best rational basis for making a zoning decision. In other words, it's consistent with the general plan. I noticed there was a lot of conversation. I did listen to the Planning Commission conversation on this. And I noticed there was some conversation about spot zoning and that type of thing. So I want to explain what that was. Mayor, would that be all right if I just took a minute to do that?
Sure, go ahead.
So a spot zone is a zone which is out of sync with the general plan. It's where the general plan does not designate that area for that type of use. For example, if you were to try and place commercial into this use, or if you were to try to place all of a sudden multifamily into this use, you'd have to go through a process of amending the general plan first and then rezoning the property. The request of the applicant is important, but the request of the applicant is not primary. Primary for you is what is the best use for that property, looking at the surrounding uses, looking at future uses. Transportation is a big issue, but I can tell you just looking at, I realize there was a number of issues regarding transportation that have been raised, but Matt tells us there's plenty of room on that road for a subdivision, just about any size low density subdivision that you'd actually put on that road. So those are the types of things you look at in making a zoning decision, and it has to be rationally based. Your reasons should be given in the motion that you make. For whatever motion you make, you should say, I move that we deny this, or that we approve this, or that we approve it R112 or whatever it is. And then you give your reasons. And the first reason ought to be it's consistent with the general plan. And like the mayor says, you have three different choices that are, where the zoning would be consistent with the general plan. Rational basis is all you need, which is you need a reason upon which reasonable minds could differ. I can tell you some of the reasons that are not to be considered in a zoning decision. And one of them I noticed is the last item in the list of items that the citizens sent in, and that is the schools, unfortunately, are expected to catch up with the zoning. And we don't zone for schools, and schools don't generally, they try to keep up with our zoning. They try to identify where we're going to grow, that type of thing. But not having schools or economic interests, the economic interests of the individuals involved, they could make more money on the property with this than they could with that zone. Those are all, those two items are specifically items that we don't consider as a rational basis for zoning decisions. But anything to do with the makeup of the community, is this the right place and the right spot for this type of use, or is there a better use? You have lots of flexibility all the way from, as the mayor indicated, the first option that he gave you to the very last option. I just wanted to let you know you do have a lot of flexibility. The only thing you couldn't do is you couldn't zone outside of what the zoning actually allows, what the master plan actually allows, which is you couldn't all of a sudden shift to 1 acre lots, because the only place that they're allowed is in your agricultural zones. And that would not be what they call low density housing. So you do have three options on the table. Outside of those three options, it would not be good to move outside of those. Does that help everybody a little bit, or?
We touch base on just a couple other points, and then we'll let council join in. Couple thoughts on the development agreement. It is recorded with the land, so it's not like if this developer doesn't do it, does it bind the next developer? The answer is yes, it does, because it's tied to the land. Development agreement would be something that the city and the developer or landowner would agree to, and it can be lots of kinds of things. It could be average lot size. It could be homes per acre. It could be size of lots, or average lot size. There's lots of things it could be if that's something you want to consider to go down that road. And as far as the citizens' comments, what I think we'll do with that is public hearing. I think I'd ask, unless you think otherwise, I'd like maybe ask one of those persons to read their list. And in that way, we can say those have been, we've had them, we've looked at them, we're aware of those. That may limit the public from not necessarily saying the same thing over and over again. And again, as far as their questions, their points, we do not need to answer their questions in a public hearing. Like, I mean, shy away from answering their questions. Afterwards, in our discussion, we can discuss some of those if you so desire, you want to discuss those. But there's not an obligation to answer questions that they bring up. Just on a side note, so you're aware, some of the things that they mentioned in there as far as home size and exteriors and those kind of things, they can be taken care of in what's called protected covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They can be put and recorded with the plat when it's recorded on the final plat. So there are ways to do some of these things that they ask about. Again, we don't need to answer those necessarily in the public hearing. I want you to be aware that there are ways in which some of those concerns can be met, can be addressed. As far as the next process, it takes care of a lot of those concerns as well. The planning zoning process. Some of you are aware before it gets to the final stage of the planning process, the staff will have gone through all the utilities, the sewer, the water, the power, the natural gas company. All those elements will have been gone through, or the project can't proceed. A developer could come in with a piece of ground and know the zone on the ground. He could start to put together a proposal, but if if one of those utilities are not available, the developer, the way we've done in the past, developers have to bring that utility up to standard, or that developer would decide not to develop. So all those kinds of utility questions can be taken care of, or will be taken care of in the process. I'll open up some questions now, or other thoughts, things you want to discuss or talk about.
A couple of questions, Ray. On the development agreement, of course, we have the ability to have a say in that, but do we have say in dictating restrictive covenants, or is that the developer doing that?
Typically, the developer does those covenants. I guess we could give suggestions, or I guess you could, Gary, correct me, you could, I guess, put in a development agreement what kind of things you want to see. That's usually the developer that puts those together.
Yeah, the important thing to remember about a development agreement is generally it's supposed to be an agreement between the city and the developer. So in other words, a quid pro quo, something for something. And so as we go through, we can demand everything that the zone requires. We can vest them in certain things, in certain aspects of development. Like, for example, the size of the streets in case it ever changes, in the next couple of years. Kind of like what we did in Mahogany Ridge when we did that development agreement. They vest in a lot of things, quite a few things up there, but we can't exceed the ordinance. In other words, if you authorize an R12, you can't require them to be. You can't then require them to put in all acre lots. Because that would exceed what you can actually require under the zoning requirements. But you could allow for a mix of R112 and R110, if you wanted to in a development agreement, that's appropriate. But as far as the covenants and conditions go, those are essentially agreements between the developer and the the property owners that come in. And we don't dictate what those are. We do have subdivision requirements on design and development. And we haven't gone as far as to indicate, I don't think, what kind of materials that a home needs to be made of. And there's a lot of controversy over that. But if a developer comes in and says, I'm willing to do this, this, and this, that's okay to put that in the development agreement. Just hold his feet to the fire. Sometimes they'll come in with design standards or landscaping or features, you know, that essentially are very influential in having you make a decision. And in order to hold their feet to the fire on those, they may not be in the ordinance, but if they're willing to do that in an arm's length negotiation, contractual negotiation, and you're not doing it as an exaction, in other words, you know, as like, this is the ordinance, this is what we're going to require you to do. But if they're willing to say, yes, we want to do this entrance treatment, we want to do a park over here, and it exceeds what we would require in the subdivision ordinance, you can put that in the development agreement as well.
Thank you. Suppose a decision comes up where the best solution seemed to be a lot size that was in between one of the three that we have, not exceeding on either end, smaller or larger, but let's say it was maybe an R113, for example. Can that be handled in a development agreement?
Yes, it could be. The way that you would do it is you would give them an R112 zone, but the condition would be that that there would be a mix of lots, R1, R13, R112. You know, there's a mix. There would be a mix so that the average, you know, meets the zoning requirement. So you could do a mix of housing, and the tough thing here is you really don't have a plan in front of you. You got some people that want to get their property entitled at the very highest level that they possibly can, but you really don't have a developer yet that wants to actually build it, and so it's tough to know exactly what you're looking at. We had a similar situation in Layton the other night. The guy just wanted approval at the highest use. He wanted manufacturing in the middle of a residential zone, and you know, just because that would bring the highest dollar value. And so
back to the agreement though, in relation to lot sizes, you say there a mix or an average. I mean, you couldn't insist in a development agreement that every lot had to be greater than 13,000 square feet, for example.
That they had to be greater than 13,000?
Well, or equal to or greater with an R112 designation.
You could, because that's a lower density. So in a development agreement, you can actually require a lower density. The thing you could not do is you couldn't require a higher density. So in an R112 zone, you could not require, for example, an R110.
Or an 11,
or 11, you see.
Yeah.
And that's because people are upset about higher density. They're not upset about you lowering the density and making the lots bigger. So yes, the answer is yes, you could require through development agreement a lower density in the size of lots.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Tony.
piggybacking on what Dave just said a little bit, I want to go to the work session agenda that Denise sent out today. I'm on it's not numbered, I don't think, but it's the one that shows the zone and the units per acre.
Shows
So
what?
the zone and then the units per acre in that designated zone.
Yep.
Okay, so it's, I don't know what page, it's page 9, I think, of 16. Anyway, here's my question. So as I understand it now, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, as I understand it, there's approximately 27 units proposed on this development. So
There's 29. That number's wrong on that map, Tony. In the dialogue that Weston put out, that number on the proposed property is 3.2, not 2.6. Some of you maybe caught that. We corrected that the other night in planning commission.
Okay, so it's 2.6, not 3.22, right?
It is on the proposed development. It's 3.22 units per acre, not 2.6 that it shows on that map.
Yeah, the one I'm looking at does show 3.22 units per
Okay,
acre.
that's the one. That's the one then.
Is
That's
that,
correct.
is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so tell me where I'm wrong here. So if you look at an R112 zone, which on this graph shows 2.9 units per acre,
Correct.
and there's 11 acres. Somebody help me, my calculator just died.
What the scenario is, Tony, they're taking out 20% for roads and utilities. So that 11.25 turns into 9 acres.
Okay, but but if you add 2.9, the units per acre, all right, that does not take into consideration roads and other types of facilities. I guess what I'm saying is, what is 2.9 times 11 acres
Where are you seeing the 2.9?
on the R112?
Okay,
That's a unit per acres on an R112.
And this is an 11 acre proposed subdivision. I just lost my calculator. What's 2.9 times 11?
okay. What, Tony, but back up just a second. That chart you're looking at, the Weston put out, in the notes there, he said that he took a 20% reduction for roads and things.
Mhm.
And that's where he come up with that little chart you see there.
Well, I guess my question is simply this. If it's 2.9 for an R112 and there's 11 acres, does that allow for as many units as what's being proposed anyway?
There's only 9 acres if you take that 25%. You got to calculate on 9 acres, not 11.25.
But it would work across the board, correct? I mean, it wouldn't just apply to, it would apply to all zones.
And it has, he has applied that to all these zones.
Okay. I see I'm not making sense here.
Okay. Tell me what you're saying.
Okay, he's saying that I'm reading this calculation deducts 20% of the property to be used for a public right of way.
Right,
He's done the calculation, okay?
correct,
He's saying that in an R110, there's 3.5 units per acre.
correct,
He's saying in an R112, there's 2.9 units per acre.
correct.
All I'm saying is, with the number of units that are being proposed, and I know it's 29, but I don't think it would get to that number anyway because of some changes maybe when we get to preliminary. I don't know. But I'm just saying, how far off really are we in terms of lot size? How far off really are we of being R112 right now?
That's a good question. We don't know. Right now, he's showing a 3.22. With these 29 homes, it'll be a 3.22. Is
Yeah.
what he's proposing.
Yeah.
You see that in the verbiage,
I-
3.22. So that is just slightly less than the one.
I guess that's my question is simply that. How far, try to use this table here. How far off are we from being an R112 anyway?
So
Well,
I could answer that question. So Tony, you're right with the calculation. So it'd be 11 times 3.5, which is 35.42, which they're never going to get there. I mean, they're going to be a lot lower than that. But even if they did, just for the point of some relationship, you take 2.9 times 11, because the streets have been taken out, and
Right.
you have 31.9. So you're about 3 or 4 homes difference on a R1 between a 12 and a 10.
But as this is drawn up right now, I mean, on this concept, if I'm not mistaken, it shows 29 lots.
Yeah.
So does anybody understand what I'm trying to say? How far off are we from an R112? anyway.
You know, Tony, even if we were at the R1, let's assume that an R1 at a 10 designation, we're close to a 12. At a 12, would the same logic hold true that we'd maybe be closer to a 14
Well, it may do, Dave. I mean,
for all the same reasons?
again, I'm piggybacking off sort of what you were commenting about on a development agreement.
Mhm.
I'm just a thought. You're right, Mayor. I've thought a lot about this past week. That was one of the thoughts I had.
Can I?
Part
can I
Part of the
interject
difficult
on-
piece with this project is the irregular shape of the ground. And it's gonna necessitate some larger lots because of the shape of the ground. So I think where you're heading, Tony, I don't disagree with what you're saying is, yeah, by necessity of the shape of the ground and by the size of the lots would need to be, there will be less lots than what it's showing. You're correct, Tony.
I agree. And so that was my only thought. Would there be, I guess, how many less lots would there be if we simply zoned it in R112? Perhaps not that much.
I took that 9 acres times your 2.9, it's 26 versus their 29 that he's got on there now, 28.
We'll do the 9 point, then 9 times the R14, R14. I mean the R112, I'm sorry. Jeffrey, you're on mute. You're on mute, Jeffrey. There you
How
go.
about now?
Yeah, there we go.
26.1.
And what was the other one you say?
Well, I think when Gary did, it was like 31 something at the R110.
Mhm.
And how many on the R112? 27, 20,
26.
26?
No. I think just looking at Wes's notes, it says this calculation has already deducted for 20% of the properties to be used in that right away. So I think you could actually use
The table.
the 11. you
Yeah,
know, 11 times whatever it is.
that's how I read it, Gary. He's already done the calculations there.
He's already included the streets in coming up with 2.9. And so what you do is just take the number of acres, multiply it by whatever the fraction is there, and that gives it to you. And on a R112, 2.9 times 11 equals 31.932 homes maximum. That if you could squeeze every square inch, it would be 32. And then on a R110, it'd be 3.5 times 11 equals, it'd be 37 or 38.9, excuse me, 38.5. So,
But how many homes is he showing on this concept design?
only 26, 27, isn't it?
29, I think, wasn't it?
29. Mhm. And so let's see.
And I realize, Mayor, your point as well is that there's going to be some pretty weird configurations on some of these lots. No doubt about that. But
So I think that kind of begs the question, though, the shape of the 11 acres is going to eliminate, regardless of the lot size, some building lots. And maybe that's an opportunity to study a bit, because my suspicion is that it would maybe have the same impact on each lot size, on each zoning arrangement. And then that may help. If it took out 3 lots at a 10, it may take out 3 at a 12, for example.
you know, Gary, I'm suddenly I'm back to the point you made a few minutes ago. Without having some type of a reasonable concept in front of us, this is kind of a tough decision.
I'm going to tell you a simple solution, but some of you may not agree with it, and that is you either give them or don't give them what they're asking for. And what I see happening here right now is nobody really wants to give them R110. And the other thing I see happening now is you really don't have enough of a development in front of you to make a decision as to what kind of development agreement you need. And so what you could do tonight is say no to the R110. And when you have a development that wants to come in and maybe wants to mix lot sizes, that type of thing, which may bring it up to R112 or in that neighborhood, then come back in. Or the other choice is to rezone it to a higher zone without a development agreement, like an R120. But what I'm saying is what I hear you saying tonight is you're trying to shoehorn something in the glass slipper that won't fit. It's because you don't have a slipper in front of you. You're trying to guess what the slipper looks like.
Yeah, we have no idea, no way of knowing.
Mm-mm. So how do you do a development agreement? It's
Yeah,
tough.
probably
Yeah.
can't. That was probably, I probably put too much effort on that. Probably cannot do a development agreement. We don't have enough information. Unless you want to send them back and let them come up with something.
Now there's a thought. That's
We don't have enough knowledge to put together an agreement.
Yeah.
If they want to, they could come back with an agreement of some kind if they want to come back with one.
and that's generally what a developer does. They come in, they give you what they would like to do, they lay it out for you to show you, and then you can make a decision as to how to mix those lot sizes, or and they've measured the front yard setbacks and the separation between homes and everything else. And then you put together your development agreement, and it really works slick that way. But when you're trying to just guess,
Yeah.
and somebody throws something, it's kind of like spaghetti on the wall, throw something up there, you got to figure out whether it'll stick or not. And
Right.
it's a tough one for you guys. So sorry.
Jeff, just
So
something to say?
Gary,
Yeah.
so Gary, so are we being irresponsible if we would require some type of a more firm concept before we decided on making a zoning change? I mean, would we be okay to have something in front of us even before we made the zone change?
Yeah,
We can't request that. If we deny it, that's their next step, to come back with something else, to present something else.
And they could do that quickly, right? I mean, it wouldn't be a year if we denied the R110.
No, they wouldn't get R110 for a year, but they might get R112 or R120. They could come back with those applications, because what I'm hearing everybody's straining over is everybody wants to do a little lower density.
I'm the opposite.
And, okay, I don't want to speak for all of you, but that's the strain I'm hearing right now. But yeah, they couldn't come back for a year, Eric, to your point, and ask for R110 again.
If I was to, am I unmuted? If I was to vote tonight, seeing what I got in front of me, I'd vote for R120. Because almost everybody that's called me and talked to me over the last week, 2 weeks, during this whole thing, they are not opposed to the development. What they are opposed to is the smaller lot sizes. I mean, that's what I've heard consistently from everybody. So, I mean, without being able to see something exactly how big it's going to be, I'd vote for R120 and say, fine, you want bigger lot? Here's the bigger lots. And, I mean, I realize this is an interesting problem to have. I've talked to my dad, I think my dad gave me the best advice the other day when you're standing out in the field. He told me, Eric, you represent not only the Rupps, but you also represent all your neighbors. You got to make the decision that's best for everybody involved. And that didn't help me a whole lot, but that's what we're facing tonight here.
Well, let me give you one more piece of advice, and that is that one of the best things you could do, because emotion drives a lot of decisions. Take the Rupps out of the picture. What if it was a California developer coming into town to put R110 there? Take the surrounding neighbors out of the picture. What if they were individuals who lived in smaller homes and they wanted something bigger there? You've got to take the people out of the process.
That's good advice.
In order to determine whether or not you have the right use on that property for the city of Morgan. And if it's right, you make the decision. this is right. The surrounding use is all big on it, but you got to take the people out of it, because otherwise you're going to get a very emotional hearing.
Okay. We have an RDA meeting starting about 5 minutes. We need to hurry and wrap up. We can continue the discussion in a regular meeting. You got any other quick questions? Go ahead and ask for input. We got to close down so Denise can change the page back and forth.
Can I just ask a real quick question? Would it look bad if we just tabled this thing and gave it some time to think about it? I'm sure I'm sure they're in a hurry.
That's one of the options. You can table it, or if you deny it, then they've got to come back with something else. If you want them to come up with the agreement, you can just deny it. Or you can table it. Those are a couple of options if you're not ready to decide.
It seems like tabling it's a little bit, how do I put it, just trying to get us out of here, but maybe that's what, I don't know.
Well, tabling is good. To your point, Eric, it is a good thing when you have a real controversial hearing. You listen to everything, and then you come back next time when you've had a chance to think through what you've heard, and then you make the decision in the next meeting. You close the public hearing so you don't get any more public input, and then you come back and just make the decision. That's advice that I've given a lot of councils about controversial hearings, is you perhaps don't want to make a decision on the same night that all the pitchforks and fires are burning, so to speak.
The school board, out of protocol, they have a reading, second reading. There are 3 meetings before they ever make any decision on anything. And for that reason, they have first, second, third readings.
Mhm.
If you still need time to make a decision, that's one thing you can go. If you want to turn it back, put it back to the developer, have them come up with what'll work on that ground. To Tony's point, how many lots could you actually get on there? If you change it, you can just deny it, and then it's in their lap for them to come back with something else. Either way, okay. We need to close this meeting so we can go into the Zoom. Denise, give us some input. We need to close out this, and we need to come into the next meeting. Is that correct? The whole separate meeting. So close out here. Denise will shut us off and come back into the RDA meeting.
All right.
Okay, meeting adjourned.